Hello, folks. This is Tim at lovechangegrow.com, and this is an addendum video to the post of the cycle of one. So, if you've gotten this far in the post, here we are. So, this is just a list of potentials using sort of the see one, do one, teach one, be one cycle or circle. But it's kind of focused on the circle because I think this is a nice way to think about things or envision things. So um, I'll start out with two or three different examples in my life where we move from the individual to our community, our group. And in that, you have on one hand yourself, and on the other hand, once we move into let's see what we can do together, that's the consciousness of many, and that provides a lot of energy or amperage, a lot more kind of power because we're combining, and in that we're able to kind of focus and expand at the same time. Focus into a single point, but yet also expand as a result of that or with that. Um, I don't know that the causality is involved in that much, too much, but so let's start. Just dive in with the intention of can we move our planet and reality to a more enlightened state or beingness? So, way back in the day when I was a kid, both in kind of my teens, early 20s, in the 70s, 80s, um, I had this experiences of group consciousness that just blew my mind. So let me first start out with the first experiences was at this thing, these events called the Rainbow Peace Gatherings. And I went to 5 or 6 of these during the late 70s, early 80s. And the experience just blew my mind in many different ways and just like, man, I never thought about this, I never experienced this, and it's like, man, this is a whole different reality that I never thought was possible. So if folks that have gone to these and had a good experience or way back in the day, I think a lot of people, these Rainbow Peace Gatherings were quite the impact. So the main example here is at the Rainbow Peace Gatherings happening on the first week of July every year in a national forest or Department of Natural Resources land or somehow like that. I'm not going to go into details about that. But on July 4th, usually I think about 11 noon or so, people would just gather in a large meadow or a large space and make generally a circle. Sometimes there would be thousands of people there. But during that, there was a 1 hour of silence, I think, starting at noon. And then um, during that time, basically, people were silent and hung out and generally stood around in a circle. But during that time, there were always rainbows, or a rainbow would appear. And I saw, a complete circle rainbow around the sun. I've seen the weather kind of be overcast and cloudy, and then a space would open up where you could see the sun or part of the sun, but there'd be rainbows. If I remember correctly, it was in Idaho where there was a meadow looking down the valley, and literally down the valley were 7, 8 rainbows that would just arch, you know, down the valley, and just like, oh wow, this is the one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen or experienced. So um, those kind of experiences stay with me, 50 years later, or, almost 50 years later. Um, so that's one of my experiences. A second experience was I attended this Sufi workshop, and there was about 60 people or so, maybe 80 people. Um, and we gathered in a big circle, kind of held hands, and formed a circle. And the exercise was to be done completely in silence. So the leader, instructor, workshop person said, "Okay, form a circle. Now let's collapse the circle into a C shape, like a crescent moon kind of thing." So then when we collapsed the circle, everybody was face to face with somebody. And so the instruction was look into a person's eyes deeply, just for a moment or two, then close your eyes, drop into your heart, open your eyes after a moment or two, and then take a step to the left and do the same thing. Look deeply into the person's eyes, close your eyes, drop into your heart for a moment, open your eyes, and then move to the next person. So by this crescent moon kind of thing, you actually ended up meeting everybody in that circle. And here's what happened. You look into each other's eyes, you close your eyes and drop into your heart. You could feel the other person's beingness, their divine spark or their piece of God or whatever, whether it was a feeling, a vision of what their energy was, what color of divine spark it was. And then when you open your eyes, both people looking at each other, you could do nothing but smile. It was an amazing experience. So within a very short time of, say, an hour or so, you met everybody in the circle. You didn't say a word, but you experienced their beingness. And it was like, poof, blew my mind. It was like one of those magical kind of exercises in a way. So the third example is when I was a day treatment leader, I would have basically 3 hour groups of and it was generally the same people. Some folks would move in and out of the group because they would transition into a case management kind of thing, or moving into the community kind of deal. But I'd have basically 3 hours a day, either in the mornings or the afternoons, with basically 10 to 12 people. And so usually once a week, I would do these things I basically called circle exercises. And so we would form a circle in chairs often, and we would put one chair in the middle, and that was called this hot seat. Usually we tried to use a stool so the person could spin around a bit. So in that, this is a simple exercise, but we used it in different ways. So each person, including myself, would sit in the hot seat in the middle of the circle. And so exercise we did to improve our self-image, improve how we presented to each other, was just like, okay, let's improve our awareness of how we present or how we look. And realize these were chronically mentally ill folks. And a lot of them, didn't have resources to dress well or anything. But the issue was a lot of times folks do not have a way to have feedback on how they appear or interact with each other. unless they're given. And in this, my group of 10 or 12 people, I tried to make it a safe place to be, to feel. But so each person would get in the hot seat. And we do a positive, a negative, a positive kind of thing. Some people call it the shit sandwich. But basically, okay, so I'm in the hot seat. The first person that makes a comment, and everybody makes this pattern. So say something positive that you like about their appearance, and then give them feedback about something that they could improve, a constructive feedback, and then give another positive thing. Okay, so it'd be like, oh geez, Tim, I really like how you comb your hair. Um, the feedback was, man, your mustache needs to be trimmed. And then the third thing was, I like how you generally match your clothes and how you color coordinate, you know. And so each person gave, in this circle of 10 or 12 people, that kind of thing. Everybody had a turn in the hot seat. Everybody made 3 comments to the person. So the person would get, let's say we had 10 people, they would get 30 comments, which 20 of those would be positive, and 1, so would be a total of 10 of improvements. And the idea was nobody could, copy each other. So what that did was, with this group of folks, they immediately improved their appearance. And the idea is that they didn't have access to feedback about how they appear because they're so, dealing with their fears, anxieties, whatever, is going on in their heads or their heart. And, and it's kind of this like horrific kind of situation. But because the feedback were from peers with and good intention, and everybody got to experience this, it was like, oh, I didn't know that I didn't tie my shoes or I didn't tuck in my shirt because I'm so involved in this other crazy stuff that's going on with me. And so the person in the middle, all they could say is, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so that was one example. Another example, which was like just blew people away, and myself included, was we did the same thing in the circle with the hot seat, and everybody had to give the person in the hot seat 3 compliments that they liked. Man, I like how, you smile, or, whatever. I like how you dress. I like that you have a kind voice, those kind of things. So each person in a group of 10 would get 30 positive comments or affirmations that they weren't aware of, or maybe you're aware of some of them, but literally in that short period of doing the hot seat, everybody got in the hot seat, everybody got, so 3 compliments from everybody, so 30 compliments. There were times when people were in tears because they had not ever gotten 30 compliments about themselves. So what it immediately did was a person had more self-esteem, more sense of self-worth, more confidence. And the great thing is that it cemented a cohesion in that group of 10, 12 people when we did this. And I generally did these kind of circle techniques or exercises once a week. And it was phenomenal. We would change it up and do different things with this circle kind of concept, but it was immediate. It was like, I could see my group of folks just coalesce and become they were supportive. They would immediately start becoming supportive of each other, protective of each other, and just would practically do anything, help each other, kind of thing. It was a wonderful experience. Um, Also, in my crisis mental health career, basically it was like creating a sacred space for a person to basically um, feel safe enough to break down. And then in that breakdown, because they were in crisis, the crisis would cause the breakdown. And in that, so you allowed the breakdown to happen, you acknowledged it, you supported it, and the person would end up breaking open. And so this breakdown is kind of, you can look at it as a way of old things that are no longer useful are breaking down because they're no longer useful. And so the person has to then break open. And if you're providing a space for a person to break open that's supported, that validates the person, that says, yeah, okay, you're breaking down, no worries, we got it. It's a normal part of change. And so then once the person breaks open, um, then they have the opportunity to break through to having a new routine, having a new mindset, having a new approach. So that's another way of kind of having a circle or creating a sphere of a sacred space. Let's see. So back to the idea, I think this is the potential piece. Based on my experiences since the late 70s, early 80s, and into my mental health career and stuff like that, I think there's a lot of potential. And I think in our world today, we're seeing a lot of things break down. We're seeing people starting to break open and expand their awareness and go, oh no, we're not having this old crap anymore. Okay, now what do we do that we're broke open? So part of this post is with the intent is, okay, now that we're broken down or breaking down, breaking open. So now what the hell are we going to do? So it's just, I want to just point out this cycle or circle or sphere or space of our sphere of influence. We can think of that as coming together, as a group, and we have a lot more amperage, a lot more energy. And if we learn to kind of use a circle to focus in on, okay, now what do we do? I think there's a lot of potential. So let's just jump into what I think are, this is not the end all or be all. Everybody's going to come up with what's appropriate for them, their situation or their community or their group, for whatever. And so here goes the, let me scroll down on my notes here. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, so from the rainbow gatherings, it was like, so we have this circle, and seemingly we're changing the weather. And it's like, what? So I think there's some potential there, whether we need more sun, more rain, more rainbows. I think there's potential when a group of people gather and kind of circle and focus on, what do we need? What needs to happen? There's a whole thing of doing prayer circles and things like that. And so I think healing circles are an idea of having a group of folks supporting a person that is requesting, hey, I need some help here. I need some support, and that's a way to do that. And the cool thing is people are doing that through remotely, through the internet, through learning, teaching people how to do that, realizing that we are not limited by time and space, that we can remote do this just by tuning in and using our consciousness and stuff like that. So, I mean, things like prayer circles or praying for folks who are going through a tough time for whatever reason. There are folks that swear by this. It works. Okay. I think the trick is, so you have the group encircled. What is their intention? And then you have the person in the hot seat. Are they requesting that? And how are they requesting that? So I think the circle and the person in the middle needs to kind of get on board with each other. And I think, if the person in the middle is accepting of that, boom. Okay. So, whether it's for healing or blessing, for supporting, shining, radiating energy, light, awareness, those are kind of things. And also, the whole thing, I think there's potential for really working with our planet, Mother Earth here, and she needs some help. We need some help, so let's work together. And so, if we get a group of folks, say, let's figure out, what is this pollution deal, or how can we improve or we need better water kind of thing. And so, making a circle or a space to discuss that issue, coming up with maybe some really interesting kind of out of the box solutions using our consciousness, and let's all focus this together. So you have a task force or have a group of concerned citizens. Okay. I think we're on the verge of breaking that open and figuring out better ways to either prevent the pollution or deal with the pollution, so to speak, or the toxicity of, food, water, kind of things. There's some really interesting stuff with the structure of water. I think it's Dr. Emoto kind of thing with the snowflakes, and there's other people that are working with this, and I guess, I'd encourage you to go and look for that because it's out there. I think that's, we can use, I guess I'm kind of seeing consciousness is an intervention, a technology for intervening to change things and heal kind of things. Another thing is, so we're basically talking about healing, releasing, transforming energy, transforming the place where we live, our resources and stuff. So here's the last thought, to keep this kind of brief, is that I find it interesting in that when protests happen, whether it's from George Floyd or the March on Washington, those kind of things, a protest is generally kind of this disorganized, but you have a mass of people kind of moving in a direction. A lot of times it's based out of fear, anxiety, desperation, anger, injustices and all that, which is all valid. But I think it's interesting in that protesting is like this word where, oh, we're protesting, we're marching, we're blocking, the interstate and stuff like that. And so it's organized, but it's not well organized in the sense of let's structure the energy of people that are concerned into how to improve the situation, and so, or how to heal the situation, how to release the energy or transform the energy that seems to be destructive, to be just unjust and things like that. So I often wonder about, let's structure the protest as a circle. And let's say some bad things, just for example, let's say some horrific things have happened with a police department. So, you have the march or whatever, that's one way to do it. But it ends up being threatening and a lot of anger, and police are like, oh my gosh, we gotta, get out the riot gear. Here's another way to think about this is to come in peace and concern and silence in a way. And let's just encircle the block of police where the police headquarters are or whatever, or where an unfortunate death has happened. Let's encircle the space and be silent but aware, and have instead of a vigil where people are going, yeah, 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 have a vigil of silence and peace for a while, say an hour or 20 minutes or something like that. And then instead of this kind of angry and unjust kind of thing, let's have a discussion. What are the community's concerns that are represented by this encircling of the community around a police department, and say, hey, look, we want this to change. We realize the police department is part of our community and we're concerned. And how can we work together with that? And so coming in peace and encircling is both, I think, can be a wonderful healing, kind of releasing some bad energy and transforming a community. So the thing of it is that it's an opening in a space that is like, hey, we don't want this to happen anymore. We know you don't want this to happen anymore. We know that police officers have PTSD. They don't want this to happen. So how in a community can we work together to change both the community and both the law enforcement? So it could be a simple thing like hey, what is the term police mean? I don't know. I should look this up. I thought about this a few days ago. But why don't we call it peace officers instead of police officers? If we merely use a different vocabulary, which is basically a different reality, is, hey, these folks are here to enforce peace. And so I think things like that, having a discussion that way, gets people to go, oh, well, I'm a police officer. No, I don't want to be shooting at people. I don't want people to be shooting at me. Let's redefine our relationship. Let's redefine who we are as a law enforcement officer. Am I a law enforcement officer, or am I a peace officer? And what does that mean? Sure, we need civil laws and ways to do things and stuff like that. But, in a lot of ways, I think law enforcement has, at least when I was a kid, I got pulled over several times by state patrol. Maybe I'll get into it one of these days if somebody asks or whatever. But I've had experiences with law enforcement as a kid where they're like, oh my gosh, wake up, son. Or, in my career, I worked with the police different times. Pretty much we'd go out on outreaches to people that were of concern that seemingly had mental health issues, and try to de-escalate the issues and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into that now, but where was my point? I kind of lost it. Anyway, I think that just kind of, oh, the de-escalation piece is that, a lot of de-escalation is where a person goes, needs to redefine, what am I doing? Who am I? And what needs to happen in this situation? And how can I support the situation in a peaceful resolution where ideally people don't get hurt, folks' needs get met, and that everybody goes home and goes on with their life in a safe and an empowered and healing way. And so I think things, I'm just using, I don't mean to hammer on law enforcement, but I think, I've met some great officers. I've met some officers that have just, what they thought they were getting into and what actually they got into were two completely different things. And they had, this one officer that I'm thinking of had this kind of just horrific kind of thing. And we were able to change it around and stuff like that. But, what he thought he was getting into and wanted to serve his community and stuff, and what actually happened ended up being two different things. And we were able to get him back, but he wanted to move on to do other things because he felt that even though he had a lot of great experience, he also had a few just horrific experiences in his law enforcement career. One more thing here is moving on. There's some other really interesting folks. Just two to mention is this guy, Rory Duff. And I don't know much about him, but I've heard about him and have seen some YouTube videos. And he basically gathers groups of people on planetary energy lines or grids to help the planet. And I'm thinking, man, how mind-blowing is that? And his thing is basically there are these energy grids, and if we gather people at these and kind of tune people into these energy grids, that we both are helped and we help the planet evolve. And it's like, yeah, I can get on with that. Then another person is Lynn McTaggart, and she's been doing this for decades, and I've known about her. I've never attended a workshop, but she has this thing called, I believe, the Circle of Eight, where she basically has small groups of people of eight, both in person and I believe remotely, learn how to kind of work with energy as a group of people, having more amperage in working with people. So that's a couple things that I think are really fascinating these days, where these folks have been doing this. We know about this have known about this kind of energy work and sort of working with the planet for decades, but now it's really being released and put out there. It's opening up to the possibilities. So I think I spoke long enough with this. Again, just start thinking about it. Okay, things are breaking down. They're breaking open. Now what in the hell are we going to do? How are we going to do this? I think circles or spheres. Circle is a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional sphere kind of thing. And in that, I think last week in my AI singularity and consciousness kind of thing is, there's this whole thing, you can focus on a point, but you also have a sphere. And I think if we start to think about our energy and ways to work with things, there's an infinite number of possibilities that we can't even imagine. But as we evolve and progress through this kind of transition from this old world to this new world, or evolving, an unfolding world, we'll expand our event horizons and our abilities, and hopefully move into a more enlightened space. All right, thanks. See you next week.